Royalty in disguise. Put your fist up in the skies.
Greetings, this is Campson, the Oracle. I am the founder of New Verse Live, which was once Remnants Gathering. I want to share with you some predictions based on visions, dreams, and remote viewing, as well as advisory meetings with my spiritual court, with my spirit guides, and my I Divine Self, of course. First thing that I want to say is the energy that we are in right now is the same energy in which the cross burning and KKK and hate crimes reached an all-time high. And this was in the 60s, I want to say between 64 and 67. So the astrological alignment is ripe for the picking for some of these experiences. Okay? So the worst in humans is being intentionally amplified to see who's ready to exist in the 5D frequency, Earth, which is what has been symbolized to be heaven on earth. Okay? So this is being able to transcend the trauma, transcend your triggers, and actually transmute them into something that's beneficial and healing for you as well as others. Okay? One main thing that continues to come up is mental health. What's really going on with mental health and our ability to be emotionally regulated, to sustain healthy sense of self that isn't a flawed perception that was created by society, the culture, religious teachings, indoctrination in school, education. Many of these things were weaponized, and this is the whole purpose in us coming to earth, to have this experience. And some of us are choosing to create our heaven on earth, and some of us are not. But each choice is sacred, and each choice is necessary for things in the simulation to play out. And we have the ability to shift our direction at any point in time, even though it often seems as if we're stuck taking 2 steps back after we've taken 1 step forward. Sometimes it feels like you're sludging through quicksand, and the more you struggle, the more you sink into the sunken place of dark thoughts, intrusive thoughts, being critical of yourself, feeling ashamed and embarrassed for making mistakes or not meeting a standard that was set by your spouse or your family or your kids. All of these things are connected to shame, which is a conditioning from our childhood traumatic experiences that molded us into who we thought we were, but really were not. It was just the false self-avatar created by the ego trying to survive and be safe and cope with the things we experienced as a child. Since many of us have not fully communicated, and I mean dialogue, where it's back and forth with our inner child, we don't know what is repressed inside of our subconscious mind. To help us figure that out, the situations in our life is orchestrated by our co-creation based on what we give our attention to, what we give energy to, what we use our money for. And these beliefs and habits and lifestyles that are dysfunctional and toxic to the self, to your innermost being, the inner child isn't comfortable in that situation. So the ego steps in to protect the inner child that we aren't in open-hearted communication with, which is what leads to reenacting the very trauma that we experience and desire to transcend. And as we are being given the opportunity to sort through who we are, who we would like to be, who we used to be, right? What do we bring to the table as far as the spiritual table in this world? What gifts, skills, talents do we have that have maybe been neglected and not cultivated and nourished and sustained with commitment for our routines and our disciplines, making the choice to eat foods that will do wonderful things inside of us as pertaining to our well-being. The gut microbiome controls the mind, and many psychological imbalances that we see happening within us and externally is a reflection of the lifeless food that we've been eating. This is when the rooster come home to crow. I think I said that right. The chicken come home to cluck. This is the seed that brings forth a harvest. There's no way around the cycles of life, death, and rebirth on this planet. We are discovering new layers of us, new beliefs, which forces us to examine old beliefs. That is uncomfortable for a lot of us because uncertainty feels as if you are victim to your circumstances and you don't have any control over what happens in your life. When we begin to feel shame about something, and let's just say you have a tendency to be abusive towards yourself to the point where any criticism from someone that may love you and are sharing a truth with you to help you, if it go through the 3D wounded filter that hasn't been addressed, and you're not self-aware, and these different compartmentalized parts of you aren't operating in congruence and coherence with each other, well, in that moment, you are bound to reenact and reinforce the level of self-sabotage that happens when we are not intimately connected to different aspects of our being. Religion was used to create this huge spiritual ego collectively, and now it's being dismantled because any false spiritual practices that aren't truly useful is being destroyed so that the rebirth can take place. Consciousness is about choice more so than location. So if we are choosing to live in abandoned buildings, our temples, right, that have been destroyed, bombs been dropped on them, it's all types of parasites, infestations, and we're trying to hold on to structures that are not serving us. And now that the grace has lifted and the veil is thin between the seen and unseen realms, there is amplification of danger in regards to what we refuse to acknowledge. This is the reason it's so difficult for many of us, I find, to acknowledge when we are wrong or have done or said something hurtful. Or maybe we didn't say anything, but it was just a non-verbal communication, energetically, whatever we're bringing to the table of our being with self and our relationships. Like we're having to eat the plate that we made years ago. Sometimes even past lives, you're still dealing with and clearing some of the things that your soul came to experience to evolve. So refusing to surrender to the waves and winds of transformation in a building that has been devastated beyond repair. The wrecking ball is simply coming in to assist in clearing out the old to make space for the new. But for the people who choose to hold on to those coping mechanisms and behaviors and habits and ways of being, they are choosing to exist in a wasteland. So when the wrecking ball comes in the form of many different things, just life on earth, right? And this could be varying degrees of illness, of death, of, separations, breakups, divorces, getting back together. Maybe some people thought they were going to meet their twin flame and be reunited, and it hasn't happened. And are you willing to give up the old story, the old temple, the old house, your body, for the new? That's the question that leads to liberation. Am I willing to surrender to this and stop trying to micromanage something that I have yet to fully reflect upon? Life becomes decisions made out of fear and desperation when we're not connected to our true sense of self, because we are measuring the events in our life by a measuring stick called the past that no longer applies unless you reinforce that program to be the code in which you live your life by. It is truly up to us. So the question is not do we have free will, but is your willpower free to surrender and be patient, trust the process, and wait on divine timing to inspire you, to allow your intuition to direct you in navigating life, which is sometimes a wrecking ball. And so, even as I'm speaking to you now, this conversation, I've already had this conversation because I'm reliving this decade over again. It's akin to having deja vu pretty much all throughout the day, to the point where I can remote view into individual timelines and I can choose how I'm going to respond so that I'm navigating myself in a direction my I divine self is directing me to go. But if the people in your life are in your life because the resonance that you had with one another was trauma, as you dissipate and cut cords and learn how to clear karmic dues, there is nothing left to keep the magnetic attraction between you and that person, persons, or even groups, tribes, and communities of people, beliefs, whatever it was you used to believe in religiously or spiritually. All of those things are shifting for our benefit. However, lack of self-awareness created in childhood by not being acknowledged, not being accepted as your authentic self, having to fit in with your family and follow the rules and be whatever they told you to be and go to school to do whatever they told you to do and marry whoever they thought you should marry. A lot of these areas where our authenticity was stripped away from us by people who simply were a product of the age of Pisces and didn't have the self-awareness or knowledge to raise us in a different way. Conscious parenting is a very new thing to many of us. As we go further into Judgment Day, which is what the underworld, Kali Yuga, Duat, Halls of Amenti, Tribulation, Rapture, Armageddon, Apocalypse. Those are just a few words. Phoenix events. Those are just a few words that conceptualize these moments of huge expansion for the collective. So the way that we treated ourselves as children when we weren't accepted, is showing up in your unconsciousness. So if as a kid, the way that you coped with being yelled at and growing up in dysfunction was to shut down and just go into freeze and not communicate your needs, not even feel like it matters, not even feeling like it's important to know how you were feeling, well, that's most likely when you drop below the veil of awareness, your baseline way of being is going to reflect the way that you coped as a child until you open the lines of communication with your wounded inner child. Develop trust. Develop a relationship with your inner child so that you don't have to abuse yourself. It's so powerful that we are asking ourselves, do I need to reparent my inner child? What type of parent have I been? Let me see. Because if you have children that are 10 or older, you're probably seeing the patterns as well. And our children carry our unprocessed trauma oftentimes, which means the shadow parts of us we refuse to accept and acknowledge or see are embodied in our children. And that is by design to assist us in the ancestral intelligence and this higher level of consciousness the spiritual gifts that accompany that consciousness to assist us in navigating these things. So people, the divorce rate, separation, and breakup rate increases is actually a really beautiful, positive thing, because we're realizing that I have not done enough healing on myself to attract someone that is a vibrational match with my I divine self. So I'm going to work on myself and just allow love to find me once I'm in alignment, instead of trying to rush it. The generations before us, most likely they just remained in relationships no matter how miserable they were, because it was a form of survival at the time, especially for women. Patriarchy did so much damage when it comes to our sense of self, our individuality, our sovereignty, justice. So many of those things were not respected. And in the astrological energy we're in now, the witch hunts and the trials and these World War I, World War II, like that same warring energy, whether it's war between the sexes or war between countries or war on drugs or war on our consciousness, right? Our psychological state of being. And so you just factor in, well, we've been using these devices now for, at least since the late 90s. What impact is this radiation having long term? And how do we know if some of our symptoms is coming from that? So in order for us to give healing to ourselves, we must first discover the areas that are wounded and still need to be healed. So when I say need to be healed, I don't mean like it's an overnight thing. It's a journey, and it's meant to be a journey. We appreciate it so much more when it's a journey than when it's just something just given to us, right? Something that's easy, like microwaves, right? These devices. And I still have a microwave in my home and use it on occasion. I try not to as much as possible. So when you factor in the frequency and the vibrations, right, of our environment and the pollution and the climate change, the heavy metals, the iron shavings that we found in the cereal we grew up on, the fluoride and the lead in the water and the pharmaceuticals in the water and the hydras that's being found in the raindrops and fresh water and also in people's bodies. Like, there's so many things happening spontaneously, simultaneously, subconsciously, that is now being projected through us into the way we navigate our day-to-day life. Now, the next thing that I wanted to mention was the negative alien agenda, the false ET gods, the geneticists. All geneticists on a cosmic level aren't of the same faction. So the interdimensional war, the interplanetary war that is occurring as well, is playing out right in front of us. Just a few days ago, I could feel ships in the air here in Memphis, Tennessee. And the feeling is, it's kind of like the feeling that somebody's watching you, but you don't see nobody watching you. It's like that feeling, but it also has another layer of like doom to it. There's no way I know how to describe it, like doom and fear and maybe looking over your shoulder, feeling anxious. this is the energy of Pluto, right? And Pluto does have that tendency to be creepy. And some people who may have never had issues with anxiety are now experiencing anxiety, especially in the male population. Anxiety was something that has been synonymous with being a woman, just as being hypersensitive and over emotional or emotionally intense or dramatic. That's something that's been synonymous with being a woman, right? Well, that's old earth, because we all have both feminine and masculine traits within each of us, irregardless of our gender. The ignorance of not knowing your spiritual anatomy also has a price. This is where we will begin to see two separate timelines, two separate realities. Though we can be in the same location, yet having a total different perception of what's happening, which can alter your reality for your benefit. For those of you who would like to delve deeper into that, there's a great book called Reality Transurfing. And it's basically teaching the laws of the universe and how to work with those energies, those laws, those dynamics, so that it benefits you in creating the life that you desire to have. And also quantum jumping, quantum shifting, which is one of my personal favorites. I have a couple of those on Patreon, which were phenomenal. We have used them as a collective, as a group, and individually. Up to this point, everybody has had some type of reality shifting experience during those meditations. And I can remember being given the instructions for these meditations, thinking to myself, this is so futuristic. Most people may not resonate with this. I want to be able to offer a service, a tool to those who are awakening that they can use now. And my Divine Self was like, you're ready. They're ready. Some people just may not know that they're ready. But if you don't put this meditation out for people to use, you're withholding something that was given to you as a spiritual gift. And if you only use it for yourself, you create an environment that supports depression, anxiety, right? Doubt, fear, feeling lost, lonely, unaccepted, feeling invisible, feeling as if there's no space for you in this world. You just don't fit in anywhere. Anybody who have these type of emotions, it's because you are being called to expand, to open up, as afraid as you may be of opening your heart and being receptive, surrendering, trusting the process, no longer trying to control things you clearly cannot control. This is emotional maturity. This is spiritual maturity. The lockdown of 2020 was the galactic time out for the children of our solar system, this part of our solar system. You know, we're not ascended masters yet. There are aspects of us that have those attributes, but there are 7 fragments of a human soul. So on a multi-dimensional level, you may be here listening to me now, but there are other aspects of you having its experience playing out within the holographic reality as well. And what happens is the level of consciousness which is affected by the information you allow yourself to feed on, just like the food, whatever you're choosing to put inside of you determines the impact of that. It determines the outcome. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect and you have to be, but the more effort, intention, love, commitment, and discipline you use to nurture yourself, soothe your soul, regulate your emotions, reprogram your subconscious mind, you become liberated and set free. And this is that sweet spot where miracles happen without us trying to force it, plead for it, or even worse, pay another human being money that says they are a representative of God, and you can have a miracle, but you got to give me $500 for it in the tithes and offering first. You got to give me 10% of what you make minimum. I mean, it sounds real bankish, you know, like, okay, we loaned you some money now, you know, and just invisible interest rates, that fees that was hidden from you. So as religion loses its grasp via Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Maldek, Betelgeuse, Orion, there are very serious, there are very specific stars and planets and zodiacs that are in play here. So most of the spiritual information that I receive is from the time walkers, the timekeepers, in my dream time, and it aligns with the Mayan calendar. This is the reason that I have said this and will say this over and over again until enough people hear it that they actually make a decision to take action, to learn something about themselves that will empower them to trust themselves, to trust the process, and to have more clarity of what you want and don't want, what belongs in your reality and what does not, how you belong treating yourself and how you do not. And the way to access harmony in your life is by accessing your harmonic galactic frequency. This is equivalent to the ingredients that were used to create your soul. And the galactic signature, it's beyond just the natal chart. It's looking into the harmonic frequencies within all parts of your soul. However, it's not bound by the Gregorian calendar of time and space, which was only created for humans to be slaves, to trade time for money. Right? Money that is paper that has been printed and reprinted until it has no value anymore. As within, so without. If that's the state of the financial market right now, it's a reflection of the emptiness, the emotions that we choose to marinate in, right? The thoughts that we allow ourselves to keep thinking, maybe even assumptions that we make about why people say or do things that they do based on past trauma of being abandoned or rejected that may not be accurate. It could just be a filter, just a schema. It's a sort of it's hypervigilance. It's I'm scanning my environment for a threat, and I'm going to assume it means this because that always used to happen to me. And whenever we do that, we're anchoring ourselves in the past reenactments of our trauma instead of being present and fully in our body, not inside of our head. The head is a separate entity from the body. And when we're divided like that, that's basically civil war between the mind and the heart happening inside of you. And many of us have existed like this for our whole lives, and nobody really ever knew or could see it because the veil had not been pulled down. And there was still some grace for us, giving us time to self-realize. Due to the cataclysms that have been occurring and continuing to occur, the wildlife that is going extinct, the trees that have been set on fire and burned down, which can be viewed by many cameras all around the world, showing lasers setting trees on fire, the food processing facilities catching on fire, hundreds and thousands of cows dying at the same time, farmers being paid to destroy their crops. What is really happening here? And who's behind it? Who is powerful enough to control so many leaders of countries into following Agenda 2030, Agenda 2045, transhumanism, right? Digital ID, social credit constructs. You will own nothing and be happy. That's a reflection of what's been happening on the shadow level within the collective on the inside of us. There is no reason to be ashamed of that. And it's okay to feel emotional about that. And it's okay to have hard days. It's okay to have days where you don't shower. It's okay to have days where you probably only ate one time, if you even took the time to do that, because you're processing so many things and are experiencing emotions in an amplified way. It can be overwhelming. The 3D Matrix has placed so many expectations and standards that we have been trying to live up to that weren't even realistic, weren't actually healthy, doesn't support intimacy and true bonding in relationships. It simply causes more division. It sows seeds of chaos into the ground. And the ground represents dirt, right? Dirt represents earth. We all were created from components of earth. Rearrange the letters to earth, you get heart, which means the seeds of discord is a virus that attacks the heart. For those of us with brain damage as a result of trauma, complex PTSD, personality disorders, was discovering so many things is beginning to, it's almost like we're feeling a resonance with stuff that we used to think only applied to other people. And you're like, I definitely got that trait. That's awakening. That's what it means. So when you leave the false womb matrix that we used to be in, in our ignorance. We perish for lack of knowledge. And when you step out of it, when you unplug, right, you see the true state of the world. You see the lack. You see the scarcity. You see the attacks. You see the parasites. You see the alien agendas playing out. You see what's happening between the Dracos and the Greys and the Lyrians and the Syrians. Like the Arcturians is so many different ET races that have seeded this planet that we're connected to as star seeds. We have galactic origins. So if the only history you know is terrestrial, and as I have taught, Earth is a form of hell, that can also be your heaven. So without the tools to create heaven on Earth, look at heaven and Earth, right? You got heart, and you also have 7 in the mix of that. Remember, our soul has 7 parts. 2023 is the year of the 7. 7 also represents complexity, spiritual completion of lessons. Picture the things that you go through as a classroom. We're at the university, reconnecting with our cosmic power. How can one do that without connecting to nature? We have been plugged to these devices and herded to almost not be able to exist without them, whether it's paying bills, checking on children, making doctor's appointments. Like, so much stuff has been set up where it's like not paper, everything is digital. So we have a digital twin created on the internet. That's a separate entity from us. It's like a doppelganger. The avatars that you use, the sites that you go to the most, the videos that you watch, the things that you click on your feed. Feed, hear the word? Do you believe that you are the only one feeding when you're scrolling through your feed? Or is it possible that something else that feeds on certain human emotions is leading you to feed it? And so the dopamine balance within most humans is very imbalanced, because we can get an easy dopamine hit just by grabbing our device. And life becomes lackluster in comparison to having the whole world at your fingertips. And so a lot of us are living our life out online in the digital world, but not interfacing with our true reality, fully present. Being deliberate, co-creators, setting intentions, remaining committed and disciplined to love ourselves despite anything that we learn about ourselves. The reason the truth hurts is because it brings a powerful spiritual gift. If truth didn't have any discomfort, everybody would just be gifted, and we would be more unappreciative, less grateful for what we have. That's already happening now. And as someone with complex PTSD, post-traumatic slave syndrome, depression, suicidal ideation, especially throughout my teens and my 20s, the battlefield waged in the mind via a mind virus called Wedigo by many indigenous cultures. There are different names. However, we can clearly see that the mind is not only the battlefield, but it's the slave and the servant to the corrupt systems that are being destroyed, which is why all of a sudden we're being triggered more easily and feeling the need to retreat up into our head, ruminate, catastrophize, worry, the list just goes on and on, because being fully present in your body and able to conduct your life using intuition, which is connected to the heart, you become the predator, not the prey. You become the top of the food chain. Parasites aren't feeding out for you anymore because you're not giving them access. You are enforcing boundaries because you're discovering how valuable you really are, despite what you see, what you feel, and what thoughts you may have, because some of the feelings and thoughts are programs from past experiences and or these entities that are within the air transmitting thoughts. And as we become more telepathic as well, we're picking up on each other's thoughts. And without the self-awareness of the different fragments of your being, who you are, the different facets of who you are, you live your life blind to the predators. This is why so many people are leaving religion now, because it's almost like ignoring the obvious has become damn near impossible to do unless you just really, really, really refuse to let go. Again, this is the surrender. If you refuse to let go of the lies and illusions you've been living, then you're going to feel the impact of that. During the time that you spend in your head, what's in your body? And how is it using you when you are below the veil of self-awareness? How do you talk? What do you say? What tone are you using? Are you being covertly aggressive, passive aggressive? Are you being arrogant, childish? Are you being egotistical, hurtful? Do you feel the need to put others down, hoping that the inferior feelings you have within yourself go away? Do you feel empty inside, so you seek things outside of you to fill that empty space because you don't know how to do it in a ascended, higher consciousness way? Unprocessed trauma creates a gaping hole inside of us, and if that gaping hole is not being tended to with mindful living and self-awareness, again, look what happens with CERN. Your brain is a quantum computer. You're the microcosm of the macrocosm. We see the ships. We see the entities coming in through the portal of the sun, right? That's happening inside of us as well. It's a mirror to within. See, this is one of the reasons why in my course I go into every aspect of life to debug and expose the viruses that create patterns we live by in a default setting, in a default way of reacting to a situation, right? So not to scare anybody, but this is happening and it's okay, and you can alter your experience based on your perception and the emotion that you connect to that perception. Thinking thoughts of gratitude and aligning your emotions to really feel that, it clears your auric field of entities that can't tolerate high frequencies. Now, this doesn't mean that grieving, being sad, angry, whatever other emotion has been categorized as negative. That doesn't mean it's not useful. And that's the black and white thinking of the old earth. Suffering happens when we don't allow our consciousness to expand. Even though you desire to change, like, are you willing to actually invest in change? What are you willing to give up? You know? This is the reason that we see this epidemic of empaths in relationships with people with high narcissistic traits. It's energy vampirism. Have you noticed, since we were ushered into this new age, when we crossed the galactic center of 2019, entering to the new age, which we were some of the first people, actually we were the first people that I had ever heard talk about this, which is why we went in so deep and taught so many master classes to walk people through this. That was so groundbreaking, literally groundbreaking, earth-shattering. I am so much more than what I appear to be. My identity has a huge dent in it, and I don't have to identify anymore with being the person, the false self person, right? I had to become to navigate this world. I am a sovereign being, and I can now choose different ways to navigate. That is through intuition and divination. Every billionaire in this world studied the stars. Why is that? You know, why does that change the outcome aligning with what it is your heart desire? Like, how does astrology help us to manifest? And so I was posing this question. I have people I love dearly that are still Christians or Muslims, you know, or any other monotheistic religions. They still practice Catholicism. And, you know, there's a level of love and unconditional love and openness between us, but it took time for us to get there. You know, but you have to be okay with the relationships that go away as the earth splits in the bifurcation. Again, you choose how you want your life to be lived and the people that we allow to be in our lives and how much we allow them to give advice and input. Their energy connects with us. And if you are an empath, and most of us are, then you're absorbing their conditioning, and you can't really tell your conditioning, your thoughts, beliefs from theirs. And that's what's been happening in relationships, including me. I did not think that was going to happen to me again. I just knew for sure I had it covered. And I noticed I'm losing parts of myself. Wait a minute. That's not me, you know. So religion teaching us to judge and to consecrate ourselves from people who commit sin and things like that. Like, that's so divisive. To say that mother would be separated from daughter and father against son. And it's like, okay, does that resonate with me? Am I in alignment with that experience? Because just because it's in this book don't mean that I have to be in alignment with it. You know, I ask people, how do you feel about Jesus saying, bring people to me so that we can slay them, murder them for not believing in my Father? Like, how do you feel about that? Because it matters. And so many of us have been programmed with codes of fear subconsciously. We're afraid to ask certain questions because the answer may pull a rug from under our feet aka the illusion, the false beliefs, the pseudo-spirituality. And for some of us, that's just too overwhelming to go through. For others, we might be in relationships with people who are still religious and aren't ready for that, and you trying to not offend them with your spiritual practices. Like, how much longer are we going to go like that? Because that's denying the most important aspect of who you are, your spiritual journey. And that is a reflection of how toxic judging each other really is. Having discernment, observing from a non-judgmental space, using intuition and divination to make decisions about who in your life, that's completely different than judging people as if they're inferior to you because they're not obeying the God and belief system you do. That's old earth stuff, and there's so many other things that's about to happen in this world that's going to show so many people that don't even matter as much as we thought it did. And are we willing to walk away from something we invested money, time, and energy into? Are we willing to walk away from it? Because some of us are afraid or ashamed that I spent all this money and time investing in this relationship or this religious belief or whatever it may be, this business, and it's falling apart. Like, can you surrender and release what no longer serves to receive the new? That's what it comes down to. It's beautiful that we can choose. And so the people who are paying attention to astrology are also studying themselves. They're studying source, prime creator's template. They're studying the energy, the spiritual frequency, right? Like, one of the worst things that I observed was being told that you're not allowed to look to the sun, moon, and stars as an aspect of the Creator to use as a navigation system for life. Like, how is that evil and wicked? What danger does discovering aspects of the Creator created for us? Can a farmer ignore seasons of harvesting and planting seeds? The seasons, how much sunlight, how much darkness is necessary, how much water, how much heat, how much soil. It's just like a farmer, because we're farmers. We plant seeds and they grow something. Imagine if the farmer was like, oh no, it's evil to pay attention to that. He wouldn't yield any crops. He would just be winging it or going by what somebody else told him that's been passed down in his family because he hadn't asked himself the questions. Is this the optimal way for me to plant seeds? Is this the divine timing? And so if you really look at it, the sun, moon, and stars, the zodiacs, the planets above us, that's a beautiful gift from the Creator to help us navigate. And that was the reason that they outlawed it, forbid it, demonized it, so that we would have less ability to navigate the chaos that they're unleashing using those exact same planets. The blue pill 3D matrix illusion is so strong. People read the Bible and hear Jesus say to pay attention to the sun, moon, and stars to know the seasons and signs of times. I'm paraphrasing. Yet, they're not free to observe these seasons and cycles of the celestials. Although they claim to be celestial beings who will have a mansion in heaven when they leave their physical body, but they know nothing about the heavens above. To be one with nature means being one with the seasons and the cycles and the planetary bodies that control that. So cutting off our ability to divine, to practice divination, which is discernment, a combination of discernment and intuition, by paying attention to the governors of the cosmos, right? And so most mythology about gods and goddesses, their children and wars, is reflected in the cosmos, the macrocosm. This leads to suffering, reenactment of trauma, and victimhood. Because if you don't know the fabric of your being, and you also aren't taking heed to the signs being given so freely to us, it's nothing about studying the cosmos that's evil. It's one of the most beautiful things in the world. It's no different than studying nature here on the planet. All of it was created for us by the Creator to have this human experience. God meets God when we meet ourselves. To walk under a sky that you are fearful of observing is to live in an utter state of fear every day of your life. How can that not have an impact on your mental health, your connection to spirit and nature, and the ability to know yourself? So as these power structures continue to be disassembled, we must face the power structures inside of us in the form of beliefs, seeking to truly meet ourselves. To know God, Goddess, is to know thyself. So this prediction for the rest of 2023, this is just the second of many, many to come. But it's important that we continue to learn, practice, and heal so that intimacy, physical intimacy, isn't creating more energetic frequencies of destruction. Since many of us, due to trauma, avoid intimacy, avoid vulnerability, avoid being seen in our darker aspects, avoid telling the truth, hoping to avoid abandonment and rejection, leads to a life built on lies, on a foundation of lies, brick by brick, illusions put in place to block your prosperity and abundance, to wall you off from the beautiful experience we're having right now. In that type of atmosphere, parasites thrive, vampirism rules, and evolution and growth is stunted. I could go on and on because there's so many other elements that I want to mention, but most of this information I've been sharing for the last 15 years, and a lot of it is on Patreon. And so you can go there and get access to the archive, the vault, that contains so much more information like this. Hidden, ancient healing practices that are simple and effective that you can use to co-create your reality, to connect with the spirit realm, your spirit guides, your I divine self, to learn your galactic signature, to learn how to retrieve the fragmented parts of your soul, which create your authentic self. The movie Soul Disney put out was a documentary. Okay. Now, I also have a mini decoding of that and its connection to AI. That's on Patreon. You should check that out because it's definitely enlightening and empowering. It's better to know the enemy that you are dealing with than to not know the power that's within you. Because when you don't know the enemy that you're dealing with, you don't have the resources to access the power within you and the spiritual army, your spiritual court that is experiencing this incarnation with you to assist you. Now, I believe not paying attention to the sun, moon, and stars, just the most basic, we can begin there. But by not doing that, that's living in a state of not being grateful for having a navigation system in this underworld, 3D, low vibrating, physical reality. If nature had the same attitude we have been programmed to have towards the cosmos, we wouldn't have any nature, vegetation, fruits, vegetables, grains, waterfalls, oceans. Can you imagine? That's very disrespectful. And in my humble opinion, living that way is living in a state of not being grateful and saying, you know what, I'm choosing to view this as evil because that's what I was told to do. However, it doesn't give me the ability to navigate my life and make decisions based on information from the fabric of my being that's reflected in the cosmos. The ascended masters and our ancestors become the celestial bodies. To not acknowledge them, to ignore the many signs ancient civilizations and texts left us, the structures, the pyramids, the mounds, to ignore those things is to choose to be the living dead. The 3D Matrix course is on sale. If this was enlightening for you, or somehow hit a resonance for you, you're likely a new earther, and you're ready to write the new verse to the cipher called your life based on what your heart truly desires. And you are no longer supporting a system that supports trauma. So that course is available, and it includes exercises for most of this conversation to work through. And we also have the chakra camps where you can have an online retreat, camp out with me. You will get a tarot card reading every single day to guide you throughout healing certain imbalances within the spirit, your spiritual anatomy, and the electromagnetic energy within that anatomy. Because if we can't access the life force energy, the vortex of energy within us to isolate imbalances, how do we become a better version of ourselves without discovering the energetics that make us who we are or appear to be. Y'all already know what's next. Man, your third eye has just been kissed. Newly stay.
Up in the skies, royalty in the skies. Put your fist up in the sky.